The Discovery. The derelict ship groaned as another dust storm battered its hull. Inside, Zeke Hawkins wiped the sweat from his brow, his calloused hands leaving a streak of grime across his forehead. He'd been stranded on this godforsaken rock for 3 years now, each day a struggle to survive in an environment that seemed hell-bent on killing him. Zeke's eyes scanned the cramped interior of what had become both his home and his prison. The ship, once a proud interstellar freighter, was now little more than a collection of salvaged parts barely held together by sheer willpower and his mechanical expertise. But it wouldn't last forever. He needed to find more supplies, and soon. With a resigned sigh, Zeke donned his protective gear. The planet's atmosphere was toxic, capable of corroding both metal and flesh. He'd learned that lesson the hard way during his first weeks here. Now, his makeshift suit was all that stood between him and a painful death. As he stepped out into the howling wind, Zeke's eyes narrowed behind his visor. The landscape was a desolate wasteland, all jagged rocks and swirling crimson dust. In the distance, he could make out the twisted shapes of other crashed ships, a graveyard of broken dreams and lost souls. Zeke trudged forward, his scanner beeping softly as it searched for anything of value. He'd stripped most of the nearby wrecks clean, but there was always hope of finding something he'd missed. Hope was all he had left out here. Hours passed as Zeke picked his way through the wreckage, salvaging what little he could. A few intact power cells here, some undamaged wiring there. It wasn't much, but it might buy him a few more days of life support. As the light began to fade, Zeke prepared to head back. That's when he heard it. A faint sound carried on the wind, almost lost in the endless howl of the storm. He froze, straining to listen. There it was again, the high-pitched whine, unlike anything he'd heard on this planet before. Curiosity overrode caution, and Zeke found himself moving towards the sound. It led him to a ship he hadn't explored before, half buried in the rusty soil. The vessel was of an unfamiliar design, its sleek lines a stark contrast to the utilitarian human freighters. The whine grew louder as Zeke approached a tear in the ship's hull. He hesitated for a moment, then squeezed through the opening. Inside, his helmet lights illuminated a scene of chaos. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. The sound led him deeper into the ship, past corridors lined with strange, pulsating technology. Finally, Zeke found himself in what appeared to be some sort of nursery. And there, huddled in a corner, was the source of the noise. Zeke's breath caught in his throat. It was a child, or at least, he thought it was a child. Its skin was a pale blue, with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the light. Large, almond-shaped eyes blinked up at him, filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Well, I'll be damned," Zeke muttered, crouching down to get a better look. The alien child whimpered, shrinking away from him. "Hey there, little fella. I'm not gonna hurt you." Zeke's mind raced. He'd never seen anything like this before. How long had the child been here? How had it survived? And more importantly, what was he supposed to do now? As if in answer to his unspoken questions, the ship groaned ominously. Zeke glanced around, noticing for the first time the warning lights flashing on the alien consoles. Whatever systems had kept this place running were failing. "Looks like we don't have much time, kid," Zeke said, reaching out slowly. "I know you're scared, but we need to get out of here." The child hesitated, then reached out a 6-fingered hand to touch Zeke's gloved palm. In that moment, Zeke felt a connection he couldn't explain, a sense that his life had just changed irrevocably. With gentle movements, Zeke scooped up the alien child. It was surprisingly light, its body cool to the touch even through his protective suit. As he turned to leave, a nearby console sparked and died, plunging the room into darkness. "Time to go," Zeke muttered, picking up his pace. He retraced his steps through the failing ship, the child clinging tightly to him. They barely made it out before the vessel shuddered and sank deeper into the planet's surface, disappearing forever. The journey back to Zeke's ship was a blur of howling wind and stinging dust. By the time they arrived, the storm had intensified, battering the hull with renewed fury. Zeke cycled through the airlock, his arms aching from carrying the child. Once inside, Zeke carefully set the alien down. The child looked around with wide, curious eyes, taking in the cramped but orderly interior of the human's living space. Zeke removed his helmet, running a hand through his graying hair as he considered their situation. "Well, kid," he said, managing a wry smile, "welcome to your new home, I guess. It ain't much, but it's better than being out there." The child tilted its head, making a soft trilling sound that Zeke took as agreement. He chuckled, then set about preparing a space for his unexpected guest. As he worked, Zeke's mind whirled with questions and concerns. How was he going to care for an alien child? What did it eat? How would they communicate? And what would happen if, when, they were finally rescued? But as Zeke glanced over at the child, who was now curiously poking at a control panel, he felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time since crash landing on this hellish planet, he didn't feel alone. "You know what, kid?" Zeke said, a determined glint in his eye. "We're gonna figure this out, together." As the storm raged outside, human and alien settled into an uneasy but hopeful coexistence. Neither could have imagined the adventures that lay ahead, or the profound impact they would have on each other's lives. In the harsh environment of an unforgiving planet, an unlikely family was born, one that would challenge the very notion of what it meant to be human. Survival and bonding. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Zeke Hawkins, once a solitary survivor on the hostile planet he'd come to call Hellrock, found himself adjusting to life with his alien ward. He'd named the child Nova, after the brilliant starbursts that occasionally lit up the planet's turbulent skies. Their early days together were fraught with challenges. Zeke had to figure out what Nova could eat, cobbling together a nutrient paste from the limited supplies he had on hand. Communication was difficult at first, but Nova proved to be remarkably intelligent, quickly picking up on Zeke's gestures and even beginning to mimic human speech. "All right, kiddo," Zeke said one day, holding up a wrench. "Can you say wrench?" Nova's large eyes blinked, iridescent patterns rippling across their blue skin. Wrench, they finally managed, the word sounding oddly melodic in their alien voice. Zeke grinned, ruffling Nova's wispy silver hair. "That's it. You're getting better every day." As Nova grew, so did their curiosity about the world around them. Zeke found himself explaining everything from the basic functions of the ship to the dangerous nature of the planet outside. He was surprised to find that teaching Nova gave him a renewed sense of purpose. One particularly challenging day, as Zeke struggled to repair a malfunctioning life support system, he felt a gentle tug on his sleeve. Nova was there, holding up a tool Zeke needed before he even asked for it. "How did you know?" Zeke asked, amazed. Nova's skin flickered with patterns that Zeke had come to recognize as excitement. "I watch. I learn," they said simply. From that moment on, Nova became Zeke's unofficial apprentice. The alien child had an innate understanding of machinery that sometimes surpassed even Zeke's decades of experience. Together, they kept the battered ship running, making improvements and jury-rigging solutions to problems that would have stumped Zeke on his own. But life on Hellrock was never easy. The planet seemed determined to test their resilience at every turn. Toxic dust storms became more frequent, each one threatening to overwhelm the ship's defenses. Resources grew scarcer, forcing Zeke and Nova to venture further from their sanctuary in search of supplies. During one such expedition, disaster struck. A sudden quake opened up a fissure in the ground, nearly swallowing Zeke whole. As he clung to the edge, his protective suit damaged and alarms blaring about the toxic atmosphere, Zeke felt certain his luck had finally run out. But then Nova was there, their small forms straining as they reached out to Zeke. With strength that belied their size, Nova helped pull Zeke to safety. As they huddled together in the shelter of a rocky outcropping, waiting for the quake's aftershocks to subside, Zeke realized just how much Nova had come to mean to him. "Thanks, kiddo," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Guess we're even now, huh? I saved you. You saved me." Nova's skin rippled with warm colors. "We save each other," they replied, their grasp of language improving daily. Always. The incident brought them even closer, strengthening the bond between the unlikely pair. Zeke found himself sharing stories of his past, of Earth, of his life as a freighter mechanic, of the family he'd left behind. Nova listened with rapt attention, asking questions and imagining a world beyond the harsh confines of Hellrock. As they worked together to fortify their home against the planet's increasing hostility, Zeke marveled at how seamlessly they had become a team. Nova's alien physiology allowed them to sense changes in the environment that Zeke couldn't, providing early warnings of approaching storms or seismic activity. In return, Zeke's years of experience and human ingenuity helped them overcome obstacles that would have been insurmountable alone. One night, as they sat in the soft glow of the ship's emergency lighting, Nova turned to Zeke with a question that caught him off guard. "Zeke," they said, their voice serious, "what is family?" Zeke paused, considering how to explain such a complex concept. "Well, kid," he finally said, "family it's the people who care about you, who stick by you no matter what, who you do anything for, and who do anything for you." Nova was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then, with a soft trill that Zeke had come to recognize as their version of a smile, they said, "Then we are family." Zeke felt a lump form in his throat. "Yeah, Nova," he replied, pulling the alien child close. "I guess we are." As the days wore on, their struggles continued. The ship's systems grew more temperamental, and the planet's conditions worsened. But Zeke and Nova faced each challenge together, their bond growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. Zeke found himself wondering about Nova's origins. Where had they come from? Were there others like them out there, searching for this lost child? He knew that one day they might have to face these questions. But for now, he was content with the family they had forged in the crucible of Hellrock. Little did they know that their greatest challenges, and the answers to some of their questions, lay just over the horizon. As Hellrock's twin suns set on another grueling day, neither Zeke nor Nova could have imagined the revelations and dangers that awaited them in the days to come. The harsh wind howled outside their shelter, but inside, human and alien sat side by side, a small oasis of warmth and companionship in an unforgiving universe. Whatever the future held, they would face it as they had faced everything else on this deadly world, together. Revelations and threats. The rhythmic hum of machinery filled the air as Zeke and Nova worked side by side, their movements synchronized after years of partnership. They were deep in the bowels of their ship, attempting to coax a few more cycles out of the aging power core. "Hand me the flux calibrator, would you, Nova?" Zeke asked, his voice muffled as he leaned into an access panel. Nova's skin shimmered with acknowledgement as they passed the tool to Zeke. But suddenly, their patterns shifted to a deep purple, a color Zeke had learned to associate with alarm. "Zeke," Nova said, their voice tense. "Something's coming." Before Zeke could respond, a low rumble shook the ship. It wasn't the familiar tremor of Hellrock's frequent quakes. This was different. Mechanical. Deliberate. They rushed to the cockpit, Nova's alien senses on high alert. Through the view screen, Zeke saw something that made his heart skip a beat. A ship. Not a wreck, but a fully functional vessel, descending through Hellrock's turbulent atmosphere. "Is it a rescue?" Nova asked, hope and fear mingling in their voice. Zeke frowned, studying the ship's unfamiliar design. "I'm not so sure, kid. That's not a human vessel." As the ship drew closer, Zeke's unease grew. Its sleek, predatory lines reminded him of the wreck where he'd found Nova years ago. With a start, he realized this must be a ship from Nova's species. The alien vessel landed with surprising grace, kicking up a storm of toxic dust. Zeke and Nova watched as a hatch opened, and 3 tall, blue-skinned figures emerge. They moved with fluid grace, their environmental suits far more advanced than Zeke's cobbled-together gear. Nova pressed closer to the view screen, their skin flickering with a riot of colors Zeke had never seen before. "They're like me," Nova whispered, awe and confusion in their voice. Zeke felt a pang in his chest. He'd always known this day might come, but he hadn't expected it to hurt so much. "Yeah, looks like it. Your people, Nova. They've come for you." But as the aliens approached, Zeke noticed something that made his blood run cold. They were armed, weapons at the ready. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was something else entirely. A crackling voice came over their ship's comm system, speaking in a language Zeke didn't understand. But Nova's reaction told him everything he needed to know. The child's skin had gone pale, almost translucent with fear. "What is it, Nova? What are they saying?" Zeke asked urgently. Nova turned to him, their large eyes wide with terror. They say I'm property. An experiment. They've come to reclaim me." Zeke's mind reeled. An experiment. He looked at Nova, this child he'd raised, this being he'd come to love as his own, and felt a surge of protective fury. "Like hell they will," he growled. The alien voice spoke again, this time in halting English. "Human, we know you harbor our property. Release the specimen, and you will not be harmed." Zeke's hand hovered over the ship's weapon systems. They were old and probably no match for the alien tech, but he'd be damned if he'd go down without a fight. "Nova," he said quietly, "I need you to tell me everything you know. Right now." As the aliens outside prepared to breach their ship, Nova spoke rapidly, their words tumbling out in a flood of revelations. They were part of a secret project, an attempt to create the perfect adaptable being. Nova and others like them had been left on hostile worlds as a test, monitored from afar. But Nova's pod had malfunctioned, cutting off communication with their creators. "They thought I was dead," Nova finished, their voice shaking. "But now they found me. And they want to dissect me, to see how I've changed." Zeke's mind raced, processing this information even as he prepared for a confrontation. The aliens outside were cutting through the airlock, the metal groaning in protest. "All right, kid," Zeke said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to buy us some time. You need to get to the engine room and initiate the emergency launch sequence we prepared. Can you do that?" Nova nodded, their skin cycling through determined shades of blue and green. "But Zeke, what about you?" Zeke managed a grim smile. "Don't you worry about me. We're family, remember? And family sticks together. Now go." As Nova disappeared into the ship's corridors, Zeke took a deep breath and opened the inner airlock door. He faced the alien intruders, his makeshift weapon raised. "Gentlemen," he said, with far more bravado than he felt, "I think we need to have a little chat about the meaning of the word property." The confrontation that followed was a blur of shouted demands, threats, and Zeke's own stalling tactics. He could feel the ship humming to life around him, knew that Nova was working furiously to get them airborne. He just had to hold out a little longer. Just as the lead alien raised its weapon, the ship lurched violently. Nova had done it. They were taking off. Caught off guard, the alien stumbled. Zeke seized his chance, slamming his hand on the airlock controls. The intruders were sucked out into Hellrock's toxic atmosphere, their surprised shouts cut off as the outer doors sealed shut. Zeke raced to the cockpit, finding Nova deftly maneuvering the ship through the turbulent skies. The alien vessel was in pursuit, but Nova's innate understanding of the ship's systems was giving them an edge. As they broke through Hellrock's atmosphere into the star-studded blackness of space, Zeke allowed himself a moment of hope. They'd escaped the immediate danger, but he knew their troubles were far from over. "Where to now, kid?" he asked, strapping himself into the co-pilot's seat. Nova's skin shimmered with determination as they plotted a course into the unknown. "Somewhere they can't find us. Somewhere we can be free. Zeke nodded, feeling the mix of fear and exhilaration. They were leaving behind the only home they'd known for years, heading into an uncertain future. But as he looked at Nova, this remarkable being he'd come to love as his own child, he knew he'd made the right choice. "All right then," he said, his hand finding Nova's. "Let's see what's out there." As their battered ship accelerated into the depths of space, Zeke and Nova left behind the harsh world that had forged their bond. Ahead lay unknown dangers, the threat of pursuit, and the vast mystery of the cosmos. But they faced it all together, an unlikely family united against the odds. The stars stretched out before them, each one a potential new beginning. And as Hellrock dwindled behind them, Zeke allowed himself to hope that somewhere out there, they'd find a place where Nova could be safe, where they could both belong. The journey ahead would be perilous, but for the first time in years, Zeke felt truly alive. Whatever challenges awaited them in the vastness of space, he knew that together, he and Nova could overcome anything. Desperate escape. The vastness of space stretched out before them, a canvas of infinite possibilities painted with the light of distant stars. But for Zeke and Nova, that beautiful expanse held as much danger as it did promise. Their ship, never designed for deep space travel, groaned and shuddered as it pushed beyond its limits. "How are we looking, Nova?" Zeke called out, his eyes fixed on the navigation console. Nova's skin flickered with concentration, their six-fingered hands dancing across the ship's controls. "The alien vessel is still in pursuit, but we're maintaining our lead. However, our fuel reserves are critically low." Zeke grimaced. They'd been running for days, pushing their patchwork ship to its absolute limits. The alien pursuers were relentless, seemingly able to track them, no matter how many evasive maneuvers they took. "We need to find somewhere to hide, to regroup," Zeke muttered, more to himself than to Nova. His eyes scanned the star charts, looking for any sign of a safe haven. Suddenly, Nova's skin pulsed with excitement. "Zeke, look, there's a debris field ahead. The remnants of an old space battle, perhaps. We could lose them in there." Zeke studied the readings. It was risky. Navigating through a field of twisted metal, and shattered ships could easily tear their vessel apart. But with their pursuers closing in and their options dwindling, it might be their only choice. "All right, kid," Zeke said, a grim smile on his face. "Let's thread the needle." As they entered the debris field, the true scale of it became apparent. Massive chunks of destroyed ships dwarfed their vessel, creating a maze of twisted metal and floating hazards. Nova's reflexes were put to the test as they deftly maneuvered through the chaos. Zeke's heart raced as a piece of debris scraped along their hull, the screech of metal on metal echoing through the ship. "Steady, Nova. You're doing great." Just as they thought they might make it through, their ship shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across the console as a piece of shrapnel tore through one of their engines. "We're losing power," Nova cried out, their skin paling to an almost translucent blue. Zeke's mind raced. They were sitting ducks now, and their pursuers would be on them any minute. Then, through the viewport, he spotted something. The hulk of a massive freighter, relatively intact among the debris. "There," he pointed. "If we can get inside that wreck, we might be able to hide long enough to make repairs." Nova nodded, guiding their crippled ship towards the derelict freighter. With a series of clangs and groans, they managed to dock inside the larger vessel's cavernous cargo hold. As the last echoes of their landing faded, an eerie silence fell over them. The freighter was dark, its systems long dead. Zeke and Nova looked at each other, the gravity of their situation settling in. "Okay," Zeke said, taking a deep breath. "I'll see what I can do about the engine. Nova, I need you to scan the freighter. See if there's anything we can salvage, any systems we might be able to use." Nova nodded, their skin rippling with determination. As they set off to explore the derelict ship, Zeke got to work on their damaged engine. The hours ticked by, filled with the sounds of Zeke's repairs and Nova's occasional updates over the comm. Just as Zeke was starting to make progress on the engine, Nova's excited voice crackled over the comm. "Zeke, I found something incredible." Wiping his hands on a rag, Zeke made his way through the dark corridors of the freighter to where Nova was waiting. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. Before them was a hangar, and inside it sat a ship unlike anything Zeke had ever seen. Its sleek lines and advanced technology spoke of an origin far beyond human engineering. "It's of my people's design," Nova said, their voice filled with awe. "But it's different, more advanced, somehow." Zeke approached the ship cautiously. "Can you interface with it? Figure out what it's doing here?" Nova placed a hand on the ship's hull, their skin lighting up with patterns Zeke had never seen before. After a moment, they gasped. "This ship," Nova said, their voice trembling, "it was created by a rebel faction of my people. Those who disagreed with the experiments, who wanted to help beings like me escape. They left it here, hoping one of us would find it." Zeke's mind reeled at the implications. "So this ship, it's meant for us," Nova finished. "To take us somewhere safe." As if in response to Nova's touch, the ship hummed to life, its systems activating one by one. A star map appeared, showing a route to a distant planet, a sanctuary. Their moment of hope was shattered by the sound of weapons fire. Their pursuers had found them. "Nova, get that ship ready to fly," Zeke ordered, racing back to their old vessel. "I'll hold them off and grab what supplies I can. Meet you back here in 5 minutes." What followed was a desperate scramble. Zeke fought off the alien intruders with everything he had, using his knowledge of the freighter's layout to set traps and create diversions. Nova, meanwhile, worked furiously to prepare their new ship for launch. As the sounds of battle drew closer, Zeke finally made it back to the hangar, his arms full of hastily gathered supplies. Nova was at the new ship's controls, the engines humming with power. "Zeke, hurry," Nova called out. Just as Zeke reached the ship's ramp, a blast of energy struck him in the back. He stumbled, crying out in pain. "No!" Nova screamed, their skin flashing with patterns of distress and fury. With a surge of strength he didn't know he had left, Zeke pulled himself into the ship. Nova slammed the hatch closed and launched them out of the freighter, just as their pursuers burst into the hangar. As they accelerated away from the debris field, Zeke slumped against the wall, his vision blurring. He could hear Nova's frantic voice, feel their cool hands on his face, but it all seemed distant. "Hold on, Zeke," Nova pleaded, their voice choked with emotion. "We're safe now. We're going to make it. Just hold on." As consciousness slipped away from him, Zeke's last thought was of Nova, the child of the stars who had become his family. He hoped with all his heart that they would find the safety and belonging they both so desperately sought. The new ship streaked across the cosmos, carrying its precious cargo towards an uncertain future. Behind them, the debris field and their pursuers faded into the distance. Ahead lay the promise of sanctuary, and perhaps a chance to finally be free. A new beginning. The gentle hum of advanced machinery filled the air as Nova worked tirelessly over Zeke's unconscious form. Their new ship, a marvel of alien technology, had an automated medical bay that far surpassed anything they had access to before. Nova's skin flickered with anxiety and hope as they monitored Zeke's vital signs. "Please, Zeke," Nova whispered, their voice trembling. "You have to wake up. We made it this far together. I can't do this alone." Days passed as the ship hurtled through space, following the pre-programmed coordinates to the sanctuary planet. Nova divided their time between tending to Zeke and learning the intricacies of their new vessel. The ship's AI, sensing Nova's unique physiology, adapted its interface to better suit their needs. On the 5th day of their journey, as Nova was studying the ship's star charts, a soft groan from the medical bay made them freeze. They rushed to Zeke's side, hope surging through them. Zeke's eyes fluttered open, squinting against the soft light. "Nova?" he croaked, his voice weak but unmistakable. Nova's skin erupted in a dazzling display of joy and relief. "Zeke, you're awake." They gently embraced him, careful of his injuries. "I was so worried. How do you feel?" Zeke managed a weak smile. "Like I got shot in the back and dragged across half the galaxy. But I'm alive. Thanks to you." He looked around, taking in their new surroundings. "Where are we?" As Nova explained about their new ship and their journey to the sanctuary planet, Zeke's expression shifted from confusion to amazement. He listened intently, his pride in Nova evident in his eyes. "You've done good, kid," Zeke said, squeezing Nova's hand. "Real good." Over the next few weeks, as Zeke recovered and regained his strength, they settled into a new routine. Together, they explored the capabilities of their advanced ship, marveling at technology that seemed almost magical compared to what they were used to. Nova's natural affinity for the ship's systems, combined with Zeke's years of practical experience, made them a formidable team. They made improvements and modifications, turning the vessel into a true home. As they neared their destination, anticipation and anxiety built. What would they find on this sanctuary planet? Would it truly be the safe haven they hoped for? Coming up on final approach, Nova announced, their skin shimmering with nervous excitement. Zeke stood beside them, a supportive hand on their shoulder. "Whatever happens, we face it together. Got it?" Nova nodded, gratitude and affection clear in their large, expressive eyes. The sanctuary planet loomed before them, a beautiful blue-green orb suspended in space. As they entered the atmosphere, they were hailed by a friendly voice, speaking a language that Nova instinctively understood. They were guided to a landing pad in a city unlike anything Zeke had ever seen. Structures of organic curves and crystalline spires reached towards the sky. Beings of various species walked the streets, coexisting in apparent harmony. As they disembarked, they were greeted by a delegation led by a being who looked similar to Nova, but older and marked with intricate patterns. "Welcome," the leader said, their voice warm and welcoming. "I am Elder Zora. We've been expecting you." Nova stepped forward, their skin flickering with a mix of emotions. "You know who we are." Zora nodded. "We've been monitoring the experiments for years, trying to save as many as we could. When we detected your ship, we hoped you'd found our message." As Zora explained more about the sanctuary, a haven for refugees, escaped experiments, and those seeking a peaceful existence away from the conflicts of the galaxy, Zeke and Nova exchanged glances. Could this really be the end of their long journey? "You are welcome to stay," Zora said. "Both of you. We have much to learn from each other." The days that followed were a whirlwind of new experiences. Nova connected with others of their kind, learning about their heritage and the full extent of their abilities. Zeke found a place among the mechanical experts, his years of improvised repairs giving him a unique perspective that was valued highly. But amid all the novelty and excitement, they always found time for each other. Their bond, forged in the harshest of conditions, remained unbreakable. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from a high balcony, Nova turned to Zeke. "Are you happy here?" they asked, a hint of worry in their voice. Zeke smiled, looking out at the beautiful alien cityscape. "You know, I think I am. It's not what I ever expected, but," he turned to Nova, his eyes full of affection, "I got my family with me. That's all that really matters." Nova's skin glowed with warmth. "We've come so far from that wreck on Hellrock." "That we have, kid," Zeke agreed. "That we have." As the twin suns of their new homeworld dipped below the horizon, Zeke and Nova sat in comfortable silence. They had faced unimaginable challenges, crossed the vastness of space, and found not just safety, but a place where they both truly belonged. Their story, of an abandoned alien child and a stranded human mechanic who became an unlikely family, had become something of a legend among the inhabitants of the sanctuary. It stood as a testament to the power of compassion, the strength found in diversity, and the unbreakable bonds that can form even in the harshest of circumstances. As night fell and the city below came alive with soft, bioluminescent light, Zeke and Nova looked to the stars. The same stars that had once seemed so cold and distant now felt like old friends. Somewhere out there, they knew, were others like them, lost, afraid, searching for home. And perhaps someday they would be ready to venture out again, not as fugitives, but as explorers, to find those who needed help, to offer sanctuary, to show the galaxy that family isn't about species or origin, but about the connections we forge and the love we share. For now, though, they were content. They had each other, they had a home, and they had a future full of possibilities. In the end, that was all they'd ever really wanted. As Nova leaned against Zeke, their small family silhouetted against the starry sky, both human and alien knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them as they had faced everything else. Together.